Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
All right, good afternoon. I will start off with a statement on Mali. The Secretary General condemns the attacks perpetrated against civilians that took place on August 8th in Gao, where at least 50 civilians were reportedly killed and several wounded. The UN peacekeeping mission on the ground sent peacekeepers to the area to protect civilians and has increased its day and night patrolling to deter any further attacks and facilitate the delivery of basic services in the affected area. And that was done in coordination with the Malian Defense and Security Forces. For his part, the Secretary General extends his deepest condolences to the bereaved family. He wishes a speedy recovery to the injured. These deliberate attacks against civilian populations constitute serious violations of international human rights and international humanitarian law. The peacekeeping mission stands ready to assist the Malian authorities in bringing the perpetrators of these crimes to justice. Turning to Afghanistan with the humanitarian update. Since the start of the year, nearly 390,000 people have been newly displaced by conflict across the country, with a huge spike since May. Our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that between July 1st and August 5th, 2021, the humanitarian community verified that 5,800 internally displaced persons had arrived in Kabul. They were seeking safety from the conflict and other threats. They have received assistance, including food, household items, water, and sanitation support. Most of these are staying in Kabul, are hosted by friends and family, but a growing number are staying in the open. 10 teams were deployed today to assess the situation for people staying outside in parks and open spaces. They identified an additional 4,522 displaced men, women, and children in need of shelter, food, sanitation, and drinking water. A temporary health clinic and a mobile health teams are providing health services to these people. Despite the worsening security situation, humanitarian agencies are staying and delivering to people in need, reaching 7.8 million people in the first 6 months of this year. The ability of the United Nations and local and international NGOs to stay and deliver depends on the removal of bureaucratic hurdles by the parties, staff safety, and additional funds being urgently mobilized. The $1.3 billion humanitarian response plan for Afghanistan remains just 38% funded, leaving an almost $800 million shortfall. And turning to Ethiopia, our colleagues in the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs inform us that the situation in Tigray remains volatile and unpredictable, and there is spillover of the conflict to neighboring Afar and Amhara regions. In Amhara, an estimated 200,000 people have been displaced, and in Afar, more than 76,000 people are reportedly displaced following the entry of Tigray forces into the region. OCHA is also looking into information that a health clinic and a school being used to shelter internally displaced people in Galikoma and Kebele in the Fenti zone was shelled, and that a warehouse was ransacked. Within Tigray, humanitarian access has significantly improved, with an estimated 75% of the area now accessible, but the flow of humanitarian supplies into the region remains insufficient. Access via the only road through the Afar region remains partially open due to insecurity and thorough searches at checkpoints. Staff rotations to and from the region is improving. Last week, the UN Humanitarian Air Service operated 2 flights from Addis Ababa to Mekele as planned. Convoys transporting UN staff from Mekele to Samara took place on the 3rd and 6th of August. And from South Sudan, the UN peacekeeping mission there tells us that following a recent upsurge in attacks in Tambora region in western Equatoria State, peacekeepers are engaging with local communities to address their security and humanitarian needs. An assessment team from the UN mission visited villages east of the state's capital, Yambio, and spoke with community members to hear their concerns. Peacekeepers have also set up a free medical camp in the WAO teaching hospital to help patients with vision-related issues. And the UN support mission in Libya says they're deeply concerned about the abduction and disappearance of Rita Faraj Freitis, the chief of staff of the first deputy prime minister of the Government of National Unity. Unidentified armed men abducted Mr. Freitis with his two colleagues on August 2nd. The fate of the whereabouts of all three of them remain unknown, and the UN mission fears for their safety and security. Jan Kubiš, the head of the special envoy for Libya, said that under international human rights law, no one may be arbitrarily arrested or detained. The mission calls on Libyan authorities to fully investigate all alleged violations of international human rights and humanitarian law. And from Guinea, our colleagues there tell us that authorities yesterday confirmed the first case of the Marburg virus disease in the country. The UN team, led by the resident coordinator Vincent Martin, is working to meet urgent needs, including the infection prevention and control. The World Health Organization supported the health ministry in the investigation that led in the confirmation of the first case, while also working with other UN agencies in supporting the ongoing response to both COVID and Ebola. Our team is helping to boost contact tracing, treatment capacity, risk communications, and strengthening cross-border monitoring capacity. We're also ensuring the continuity of essential social services, including against protection against sexual exploitation and abuse. And also on the health front, in Malawi, the UN team led by resident coordinator Maria Jose Torres continues supporting the response to the virus. The country received over 300,000 single doses of vaccines donated by the United States through COVAX over the weekend. This brings the total number of COVAX-backed vaccines to Malawi to more than 850,000. We also recently provided 145 oxygen concentrators and 35 oxygen cylinders to boost critical care facilities. 8 UN agencies are also supporting authorities to distribute vaccination, strengthen access to essential services and education, as well as protecting vulnerable communities. And in the Bahamas, they received over 33,000 vaccine doses. This is a third batch received by COVAX. As of the 31st of July, a total number of 106,000 doses have been administered, with more than 61,000 people having received the first dose and 46,000 being fully vaccinated. And moving on to Madagascar, and to the situation we've talked to you about in the south, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization today said their latest data shows an alarming number of people facing severe acute insecurity in the southern regions of the country. According to FAO, in the post-harvest period between April and September, the number of people facing acute food insecurity was estimated at 1.14 million, about 43% of the analyzed population, compared to 35% of the analyzed population in the period from January to March. FAO warned that this number is projected to increase to 1.31 million in October-December period. That's 24% higher on a yearly basis. FAO said that a particular concern is the increasing number of people in the most food insecure categories, which are Phase 4, emergency, and Phase 5, catastrophe. Currently, an estimated 400,000 people are assessed to be in these categories, but the number is projected to increase to more than 500,000 in the last quarter of this year. FAO stressed that an extension and immediate scaling up of ongoing food and livelihoods is urgently required. And lastly, we want to thank member state for bringing us up to the nice number of 120 fully paid up member states. The country's national flower is called the Dok Champa. Anybody can guess?
Cambodia?
No. It is also the only landlocked country in Southeast Asia.
Wow.
Exactly. You know, Edie, your experience in the field has come in handy today. So let's go. Go ahead.
Okay. I have two questions. First, does the Secretary General have any reaction to North Korea repeating its threats to respond to U.S. South Korean military exercises, which the North claims are a rehearsal for invasion.
And your second question?
Second question is on Russia leveling new charges against opposition leader Alexei Navalny, of creating a foundation that Moscow claims infringes on people's rights. His foundation for fighting corruption, which was launched 10 years ago, has published dozens of videos exposing alleged corruption of senior government officials.
On the DPRK, we would reiterate that diplomacy is the only pathway to a sustainable peace, and we would call for a lowering of the rhetorical tensions that we are seeing. On your second question, I would reiterate the Secretary General's concern that he's repeated on a number of times across the world, where we are seeing a shrinking of space for civil society. James.
Let me start with Afghanistan. Meetings taking place in Doha, series of meetings. Who is representing the UN, and can you give us a readout of what has happened so far?
Jean Arnaud is in Doha, where meetings between representatives of the Islamic Republic and the Taliban and other regional representatives and envoys are continuing in different formats. I'm not in a position to give you details, but I can tell you that he is there and fully engaged.
A question about the 11-year sentence for Michael Spavor, the Canadian citizen sentenced in China. Many diplomats who've observed this do not believe there was a fair trial. What is the UN's reaction to this?
I don't have any language on that for this moment, but I do expect to have something a bit later on, which I'll share.
Okay, then I'll ask you one more, which is you mentioned Libya and UNSMIL, but you didn't mention the Libyan political dialogue talks, which I believe have restarted in virtual terms. Could you tell us what is at stake here, and if they don't come to some agreement soon, is the timeline now of an election at the end of the year at risk?
Look, we're continuing with the timeline that was elaborated and agreed upon, and we continue to hope that all the Libyan parties will work towards that goal. Celia.
Stefan, in South Sudan, how many people from the mission have been vaccinated? And if they are not, how can they do their work in a country where almost nobody is vaccinated?
Well, I mean, I don't have the numbers of who's been vaccinated in the mission off the top of my head. What I can tell you is that throughout the start of the pandemic, we have continued our work, whether it's in South Sudan or anywhere else where we serve in the field, in all the peacekeeping missions. People are taking the precautions that they can with masks and social distancing, whatever they need. So we are scaling up the vaccination of our colleagues in the field. But before vaccines were even available, we were continuing to do our work. Okay. Yes.
Actually, a question yesterday, but I want to ask again. My question is regarding ecological terror ongoing by Armenian in liberated regions of Azerbaijan. So the transponder Oktyuchay River is being polluted with the...
I heard you. In fact, I was trying to get something for you. I've been told to direct you to our UN Environment Program. So I'm sorry I made you wait for that non-answer, but I'll give you the context there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything in the... Benny, please.
I'd like you to try to confirm or deny or maybe comment on a story that appeared yesterday from Gaza. According to a story, UNRWA asked a UN weapons exports from, what are they called? UNMAS, to inspect a tunnel that was found in an UNRWA school in Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza 2 months ago. And Hamas blocked the inspection, and therefore another inspection that was similarly planned for Rafah was also canceled. According to the story, UNRWA said that they can't open the school year if the inspection is not taking place. Can you shed any light on this?
No, I mean, our colleagues at UNRWA could give you the details. What I can tell you is that it is critical for every UN premise anywhere in the world to be free of any weapons or anything that would put that premise at risk.
But that tunnel in Gaza City was found 2 months ago, and now they're trying to inspect it, but are not being allowed to do that.
No, Benny, as I said, on the operational details, I would ask you to ask UNRWA. I can only state what our policy is. Mr. Gladstone.
Hi, Steph. Thank you. Forgive me if this question has been asked in recent days or weeks, but is there a list of heads of state and government who are going to physically appear at the General Assembly in 4 weeks, 5 weeks' time? Is there a...
No, the short answer is at this point, no. I think you would have to check with the permanent missions to see what their plans are. I think it's just is a matter of a reality check, whether it's for heads of states or our own personal lives. We may have plans for September, but I think we all have to see what the situation will be in late September. Right now, the format of the GA, format of the GA remains unchanged, is what we had announced a few weeks ago, which is some member states will be allowed, member states will have the choice of either having an in-person delivery of a speech or a video delivery of the speech. I assume that a lot of plans will be made at the last minute because of the changing situation of the Delta variant in the four corners of the world. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stefan. 7 brothers were forced to demolish their own home by their hands in Beit Hanina. Is there any cruelty in history more brutal than that? And why Mr. Tor Winsland is silent on these crimes?
I think Mr. Winsland reports regularly and thoroughly on the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, including on the issue of demolitions, which we have spoken out against. Mr. Bays.
Couple more questions, another one on Afghanistan and then 2 on Ethiopia. On Afghanistan, Deborah Lyons, when she spoke to the Security Council on Friday, was very clear what she wanted. She listed 6 bullet points of things she wanted from the Council. She said the situation was urgent, and I think her words have been borne out by the fact that quite a few cities have, I think 6 have fallen since she spoke, and yet silence from the Council. What's the Secretary-General's message in support of his special representative in terms of them actually doing something with regard to her very specific list?
I mean, the special representative speaks on behalf of the Secretary-General. So the Secretary-General continues to, as in many conflict areas, the need, there is always a need for a strong, unified voice from the Security Council. My understanding is that Ms. Lyons will be back again in front of the Security Council, I think later this this month, but it is something that we remain in touch with all the parties.
On Ethiopia, the Oromo Liberation Army have issued a statement saying that they are now in a military alliance with the Tigray People's Liberation Front, and their leader is quoted as saying the only solution now is overthrowing this government militarily. What's the UN's reaction?
We do not believe that there is a military solution to this conflict. As the fighting continues, though we've seen some of it abating, which has allowed for greater humanitarian access, we're still seeing pockets, we're still seeing some zones of conflict. We're seeing horrendous reports of human rights violations. I mean, I think today Amnesty International came out with a report on the allegations of rapes and enslavement by military forces against women in Tigray. It's one of these cases where we run out of words to describe the horror of what civilians are being inflicted. More conflict can only lead, sadly, to more civilian pain.
I was going to ask a question about the Amnesty report, but you've raised that yourself.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask one more then, if I can, which is following up on Rick's question on the General Assembly. You can't tell us which leaders are coming, so we will have to make 193 phone calls. I'm assuming some of these missions have actually told you that their leader is coming. It would be useful guidance.
No, I can understand, but it is not. There are. As always, and prior to a GA, some member states are telling us this may happen, this may not happen. It is not for me to confirm the travel plans of a head of state or head of government, especially this far out from the GA, in a time where things are so volatile in the sense of what will happen.
So my question was this.
I can give you the 193 phone number.
I've got the blue book.
Yeah, I know you do.
But yes, that's member states and heads of state who will decide, and you will let them do what they want to do. The press, you will not let us do what you want to do. You will have rules in place. Can you tell us what the rules are going to be in terms of the reporters here? Will it only be resident correspondents? Will the UN premises be open to other visiting correspondents? Perhaps you could tell us the media arrangements, because we won't have any say in it, as ever.
Okay. One, our friend Tal, I think will be back here in person on Monday. I know he's been advocating on your behalf, as we have. The visiting, allowing visiting delegations of press will obviously depend on leaders, delegations coming in, but I would advise you to reach out to Tal. Edie.
A quick follow-up on two things that James mentioned. I would just like to put on the record that every year before the GA, we have at least gotten an early list of possible speakers in July.
Yeah.
So I am, and obviously lots of things change change from that list, and we get updates.
I will try to see where we are on the speakers list, but obviously in this, the speakers list is one thing. Who will be speaking in person and who will be speaking by message to answer James' question is a different thing.
Yes.
But I hear you. I hear your.
And if you're going to do a speakers list, perhaps under these very unusual circumstances of COVID, you could put on the speakers list, possibly in person or whatever. Second,
we could, yes.
Yes, you could.
It
would be very helpful.
Okay.
Secondly, on the Oromo link-up with the Tigrayans, is there any possibility, since you have said that the United Nations does not believe in a military solution, that the UN might offer its good offices to try and tamp down this conflict and find a peaceful solution?
I mean, I think we have good offices are always available, as a matter of course, should all the parties want it. We've had contacts with most of the parties and continue to deliver the same message. Okay, I think that is it for slow. Rick, I think Rick Gladstone had a follow-up. Yes.
Thank you.
Hold on, Nick.
I wanted to follow up on what a question that James had on Afghanistan. Are there any plans by the UN offices in Afghanistan to scale down or evacuate the staff there because of the rapidly changing security situation with the number of provincial capitals falling? We had 3 or 4 yesterday.
Listen, contingency plans are continuously updated and reviewed in order to keep all our staff safe, while at the same time delivering as much aid as possible. But forefront in our mind is helping the people of Afghanistan and keeping our staff safe.
So does that mean that you haven't, I'm sorry, can I follow up?
Yeah.
You haven't evacuated any UN staff from Afghanistan?
No, I'm not. There's been no evacuation. Our footprint, as of now, I can tell you what it basically is. We have about 3,000 or so national staff and about 300 international on the ground. There are more people working that are working remotely because of COVID. They had been working remotely. Yes, ma'am.
Although there is a ceasefire agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, Armenia violates it almost every day. I want to emphasize that fact. They are shooting Azerbaijani military base in Nakhchivan a few days ago. What's the reaction of UN?
I don't have, we do not have, the UN does not have a monitoring mission on the ground. We would encourage all the parties to respect the agreements that have been agreed up to date to ensure the safety and calm for all civilians. Mr. Bays.
Just to follow up on Rick's question about UN staff across Afghanistan, just to be absolutely clear on what you just said, are you telling us that no UN staff have been repositioned in the last few days? For example, from Kunduz, from Faizabad, places like that?
I'm not saying people haven't been relocated. I mean, I took Rick's question as an evacuation
from the country.
Exactly.
No, but I'm asking, can you tell us how many staff? Are there provinces where the UN had an office where that office is now
I will
not
see
operational?
what numbers I can get you on that. Okay. Thank you all. I will escape.
Thank you for listening today, and thank you for supporting us with our sponsors. Please go to depictions.media for more information and click on our contact link and let us know how we can help bring your story and help bring us to a better world. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.